Welcome once again, everyone, to our, in this case, Mary's School of Prophecy. And I thought I had everything going, and then I was about to, you heard me, the faint tinkling of the bell. That's because I didn't have my microphone in place. So while the bell is going, I have to go and adjust my microphone so that you can hear what I'm talking about. And then I realized I hadn't uncovered the camera. So where are my engineers when I need them? In any case, I'm glad you're all here because we do have a very interesting dream from Snowland to interpret. And one of these days, the church will acknowledge Snowland's dreams. I think they're very important. And I see if you don't agree with me. And I want you to pay attention because at the end of the dream, I'm going to ask what your interpretation is, because I think there are at least three possible interpretations, and maybe they are all valid. Now, I'm going to give you my interpretation of what the food market in Snowland's dream represents. Does it represent food markets? I mean, we've had food markets burning. In fact, that's why I used the burned food market, and I think it was in Chicago, as the thumbnail. Does the food market represent the Catholic Church? The burning of the Catholic Church? That's going to be my interpretation. That's what I believe. That's like Snowland's other dreams. Many of them are about the destruction of the Catholic Church. Or does the food market represent the United States of America? And I think these are all valid interpretations. And a good argument for that was because Snowland received her dream on the 4th of July. But the 4th of July has other meanings also. The numbers 4 and 7 are the two primary end times numbers, in which case the prophecy is about the church. And of course, the 4th of July indicates the United States, but it's also, as Peter Breen pointed out this morning, it also indicates the start of the Illuminati, the one world government. So it could be any of those interpretations. And I'm going to start that in just a second. My new policy lately has been to do the housekeeping first, and then afterwards I can go right to the chat and see what you people think. So for those of you who are new to the program, there's my name and address, William Tapley, Post Office Box 291, Osage, Iowa 50461. We are offering a current offer of a blessed rose petal from Bayside. If you would like a rose petal or up to 3 or 4, send me a self-addressed stamped envelope. I will mail these right out to you. And don't forget my book offer. I offer 4 volumes in the Holy Spirit Guide to End Times Prophecy. Go to my website, thirdeaglemedia.com. Click on the newsletter tab, and the July newsletter has an order form. And if you want to order them right away, go to the donate button and click on the PayPal link, or send me a money order. And if you want to see what you're getting, all my books are published in their entirety on my website. Name me one other person on YouTube that will let you read his books ahead of time. I don't think there's anybody else, but I do because the information is that important. Okay, now I hope the sound is okay because my microphone is not in the exact same place. And by the way, if Snowland is here, that's good, Snowland. So if you want to call in, after I do the decode, I do have my phone here, so you can call me up if you want to. No pressure. But if I've made a real bad mistake, call me up and chew me out. Tell me that I've got to turn in my co-prophecy license. Did I give you my titles, by the way? I said this is Mary's School of Prophecy. I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the Eagle of the Apocalypse and the co-prophet of these end times. Okay, now the housekeeping is over with, so we can get to this decode, which, as I say, is very interesting. And I talked to Snowland last night, and I really hadn't decoded it at that time because she'd only sent it to me via email in the afternoon. So this is what I'm going to tell you is probably going to be new to her also, and I hope that I get it right. And some of this she told me about, so we'll go through it. And as we go through this, I want you to remember the rules of apocalyptic prophecy, because I believe this is apocalyptic prophecy. The symbolic interpretation takes precedence over the literal. That doesn't mean you never use the literal interpretation. It's just that the symbolic interpretation is almost always the better interpretation. Sacred numerology is always very important. I already mentioned 4th of July. Both 4 and 7 are extremely important end time. The two most important end times numbers are 4 and 7. And you need a co-prophet. All end times prophecy must be interpreted, from Daniel to Ezekiel to Zechariah, even our Lord's prophecy in Matthew 24, the Olivet Discourse. It must be interpreted. All right, so now let's look at part 1 of Snowland's dream. And first of all, let me get my screen set up here so I do this right. I have to manipulate several views here. I've done this before, but I think we can do it. Okay, so this is the first slide. Snowland's Food Market Dream. And that's my title, by the way. She did not give it that title. And Snowland starts. Since I started work recently, I won't mention where, we suffered a mini blackout in the area where I work. It lasted about 2 to 3 seconds. This is where it gets interesting. On July 4th, I had a dream. I don't know if it is prophetic, but it is worth a try. So I like the way Snowland says it's worth a try. Okay, so I'm going to give a try here, Snowland. So there are 2 events here in this first part of the dream. First of all, is something that happened in real life to Snowland where she works, and that is they had a 2 to 3 second blackout. And then she had the dream on the 4th of July. And in her mind, she must connect these two, that they are related, and I agree they are related. So in this first part, what does the 2 to 3 seconds symbolize? Now, the 2 to 3 seconds blackout, it could be an EMP attack. I think that's the first thing people would think of. It's symbolized. I mean, it wasn't an EMP attack where she works. It was, but it symbolizes an EMP attack. And I think that's very likely. And that would coincide with Dana Coverstone's dream. But I'm going to tell you my interpretation, which I believe is more important, and that is that 2 before 3, as you know, symbolizes the decimal 0.666. In other words, 2 before 3 is another number for the Antichrist. 2 is a number for man, a man and a woman. Excuse me a minute. Maybe I need a sip of dandy here. Two before 3, therefore, represents the Antichrist. I think all of these interpretations are probably correct. In fact, apocalyptic prophecy often has more than one interpretation. So if that's true, then the food market, if I'm right in the 2 to 3 seconds blackout, the most important interpretation is that it refers to the Antichrist. Then the food market that she's going to talk about represents the Catholic Church. Okay, so let's look at the second slide on my list here. I was lost in a maze trying to find the entrance to a food market. I was walking on heavy snow, maybe 3 to 5 inches of snow, and very cold. I did not have a coat, but a sweater. I was confused as to where I was going, but I took a wrong turn, only to stop and see shadow figures staring back at me. It was a 4 black shadow group together, all the same height. They looked like shadows, no face, nothing. They gave me a bad feeling. Now, the number 4 of these figures would represent mankind, as you know. A man and a woman plus a man and a woman. Of course, it's also another end times number. So is Snowland trying to find the entrance to this food market? Is she trying to find the entrance to the Catholic Church? That's what I believe it symbolizes. In other words, the food market. The Catholic Church is a food market, giving us the most important spiritual food, which is the body and blood of our Lord. So I think that is actually the food market that Snowland is trying to find the entrance to. Now, what does the maze represent? I'm sure the maze represents our secular society trying to prevent her from finding the church. And I asked her what she meant by a maze, and she said there were walls, just like a regular maze that she was trying to navigate around. The four figures, as I said, represent mankind, and we'll talk about that more later. And the deep snow, what does that represent? I believe that is a reference to Matthew 24, where Jesus said, "Pray that your flight be not in the winter." I think that's what it represents. Now, what does 3 to 5 inches of snow represent? All these numbers are important in all of Snowland's dreams and in all of apocalyptic prophecy. So what does the 3 to 5 inches of snow represent? I think the snow, first of all, represents, as Jesus said, pray that your flight be not in the winter. In other words, the tribulation period. The 3 to 5, I believe, represents 3.5. And that would be 3.5. That's the number of years of the Great Tribulation. So I think that is... So we've got a good picture of what's going on in Snowland's dream. We're talking about the tribulation, which prevents Snowland from reaching the Catholic Church. There's also a maze, I believe, of society preventing her. And there's also these 4 figures, 4 sinister, evil figures. Now, Snowland says that she is not wearing a coat. What would that symbolize? Well, that's also in Matthew 24, where Jesus said, let those who are in the field not go back to take their coat. In other words, Snowland is outside the church. And that's what Jesus is referring to when he says, let those who are in the field. The field represents the Roman Catholic Church. And that's why Snowland doesn't have her coat. She has fled the church, just as Jesus recommended, in fact, warned. And those in the end times, in the tribulation, we have to leave the Catholic Church. Okay, let's look at the next slide I have lined up here. I turned around and went to find the entrance. I noticed I was with another woman. I didn't know her, but we guided each other to find the entrance. But before we found it, we found another woman. She was on her phone. She was complaining about how she couldn't find the entrance. We offered to help, but she denied us as she went on her way. So now who's this other woman with Snowland? Snowland said she thought it might be Mary, and I think she's right. I think the woman, in other words, Snowland says that they were guiding each other. Well, certainly that would be Mary guiding her in these end times. And when Snowland says that she's guiding, that means that she is cooperating with Mary. So Snowland is in a good position as far as this, the trial she's going through in this dream. The other woman, I believe, represents the uninformed laity, the ones who are trying to depend on the phone, maybe on some site that has a GPS on it. That's how she's trying to find the church. She'll never find the entrance to the church that way. But I think that's what the other woman represents. And she comes back into the dream a little later on. Okay, let's look at the next slide I've got worked up here. For us, we finally found the entrance. Once inside, an old man came up to me and said he had worked there since 1870. He was born in 1840. I saw on a paper when his birthday was. And yet this year is 2022. He was there to turn on the engine that supplied the whole building with power. He walked away. I followed it behind him, going with some other people, tagging along. So now we have a very interesting character that just appeared. Who does this old man represent? I'm going to suggest that the old man represents the Antichrist or / Satan. Now, Snowland did not say he was an evil person. I asked her if he seemed to be good or evil. She said he just seemed like an ordinary workman. And that doesn't mean he isn't. I think as we analyze this, we'll see that he has to be an evil figure. Now, he said he started working at the church in 1870, and he was born in 1840. So that means he started working, whatever the working means, maybe undermining. So he started working at the church when he was 30 years old. Now, that would mirror, of course, Christ, because Jesus began his ministry at 30 years of age. I think that's the first indication that this is the Antichrist, or the forces of the Antichrist. Now, he said he's been working in the church since 1870. So how many years ago was that? And Snowland mentions 2022. That's the year she had this dream, the current year. Well, you subtract 1870 from 2022, and what do you get? And I worked this out with Snowland last night. Well, 170 minus 2022 equals 152 years. Now, of course, he hasn't been, this is not a real workman who is 152 years old. This is symbolic. 152 is 1 year less than 153. 153 is Mary's rosary number. It's another extremely important end times prophetic number. It's the number of Hail Marys and the fish that Peter catches in the miraculous draught of fishes, for example. So what is the significance of having a number one less than a perfect number? It's an evil number. In other words, like 7 is a number for God. 1 less gives you 6, the number of Satan or mankind or evil, in other words. 666 is the Antichrist number. It's the same way with the number 10, which is a good number, like the 10 Commandments. So you have 911 or 911. 9 is 1 less than the perfect number. 11 is 1 more than the perfect number. And so 911 is not a good number, for example. And so the same way with here. 152 is another indication that he's been working for 152 years to undermine the church. Well, we'll see what we mean by undermine in a few minutes. That means that he's not using the rosary. Let's put it that way. And now, what is the significance of the year 1870? Well, the year 1870, the only place I could think of it, that number is found in the prophecy of La Salette. And we find also here that this man, this workman, it gives power to the church. What kind of power is he giving to the church? So let's look at the La Salette pertinent part of La Salette, which has to do with this 1870, the year 1870. So let me find that slide for you. So here is Our Lady of La Salette Prophecy, and this is the start of chapter number 5. If you've watched my series on La Salette, you know I have divided the La Salette Prophecy up into 7 chapters. So this is the start of chapter number 5, verse number 1. This peace among men will not last long. 25 years of abundant harvest will make them forget that the sins of men are the cause of all woes which happen on earth. And that the year, in other words, is 1870, because 25 years of abundant harvest from the time that Melanie and Maximin received their secret from the Blessed Mother was 1846. 25 years of harvest is not the same as 25 years. So you add 24 years to 1846 and you get 1870. That's the significance of 1870. In 1870, the Franco-Prussian War broke out. And in verse number 2, a precursor of the Antichrist, etc. And I suspect that may be Bismarck. And one of his quotes, he says, "I have wished to crush Rome that I might crush Christianity." So is Bismarck the precursor of the Antichrist that Mary talks about in the prophecy of La Salette. When I did my video, I suggested it could be Hitler, but I left it open to interpretation. I begin to think now it may well have been Otto von Bismarck, the Chancellor of Germany. He was an evil person. He was very successful. He's considered a German hero. But he also had no use for the Catholic Church whatsoever. So for him to be a precursor of the Antichrist makes sense. And for him to be referenced in Snowland's dream, I think is one more indication that this man, this workman, is the Antichrist. Okay, let's look at the next slide. Let me check here, get it right. Snowland says, "We went to the engine. It was in the middle of the whole room. It was huge, very big, the size of a medium tree, but not that tall. The people looked up to see the old man put coals inside of the engine. I must admit, I was amazed. And I talked with her last night, and I asked her what she meant, what was she amazed about? And she was amazed that an old-style coal-fired engine was being used. And then something went wrong. Very, very wrong. And it is kind of strange that this food market would be either heated by a coal fire. Of course, this would be the wintertime, that this dream is taking place. So it's possible, but she says it was an engine for power. Now, this could go along with the interpretation that the 2 to 3 second blackout was an EMP attack. And that would indicate that they are using coal in this food market because that's all they have left. They don't have a regular engine for heating or for power. And so for that interpretation, this would fit. Now, I'm going to suggest that this symbolizes the fires of hell. And I think that's true. I mean, you see demons all around shoveling coal into big furnaces, which symbolize the fires of hell. That's my interpretation. And that would fit with the old man being Satan or the Antichrist. So let's look at the next part of Snowland's dream. My vision went red, a little yellow, but mostly red. A terrible sound hit my ears, and my vision was moving weirdly. I had to get out. I yelled to the people to get out, but they didn't listen to me. It started to get hot. The lady that I came with started to run away. I stayed a little, but when people started to get burns and started to yell in pain, I ran after the lady. Once outside, the building exploded. I told the lady, I have to call 911. She said, good luck with that. So I think Mary kind of gave a joke there, don't you? Good luck with that. Well, that verifies to me that this is a spiritual situation. Of course, 911 is pretty much useless anyway, but in this case, it has no use because the fire is in the Catholic Church. You wouldn't, and it's a spiritual battle. So Mary says, don't waste your time calling 911. Notice that Snowland follows Mary out of the burning building. And I think the message here is that Mary will lead us out of harm's way in these end times. Okay, let's look at the next to last slide here. I looked at her for a moment. I grabbed her arm as we took off trying to get some help. Any kind that we can get at this point. The snow had gotten so deep that we had to pick up our whole leg just to walk. I heard a woman talking. She was under white covers. I was stunned for a moment. that she survived. She had a mattress on top of her. I removed it, and she was on the phone with someone. She looked up to us with a terrified face and told us she heard whispers in her ear, and she felt like someone was watching her and following her. But she doesn't see anyone behind her. So now this other woman that Mary and Snowland run into, I believe, I think I said this before, she symbolizes the clueless laity. I suspect that she is calling 911 for help. Now, it's surprising that Snowland is amazed that she survived this explosion, but maybe that's what the white cover symbolizes, that the woman is basically a good lady, but she simply doesn't understand what's going on. And there's so many Catholics like that. The snow getting deeper, I think that's pretty obvious that the tribulation is getting worse. And if this tribulation period lasts 3.5 years, obviously it's going to get deeper and deeper and deeper. The church being suffering this explosion means that the church is not going to provide any protection. So what is Snowland going to do now in this dream? And to find that out, let's take a look at the next slide. I told her to calm down. I walked to where we have to exit. Now, this is the maze she wants to get out of now, which is what's outside the church, remember? Only to be stopped by the shadow things again. But this time there were 5. I backed away and grabbed the 2 ladies' arms to go to the main entrance. I told them to keep an eye behind us. We were stuck between what was no longer a building and 5 shadow people behind us. And that is the end of Snowland's dream. So as you can see, it is a fascinating dream. The number of figures went from 4 black ominous figures to 5 black ominous figures. So there is a passage of time here. The snow gets deeper. The time is going by. The tribulation is going by. Now, in this case, I already told you about the 4 represents mankind, the 4 figures. So 5 normally represents the rosary in prophecy, but it can also refer to heaven. And I couldn't think of any before the program, but I know I have found that in prophecy, that 5 is a reference to heaven. So why would heaven be associated with these 5 black ominous figures? And I got to thinking, these 2 groups of figures, the 4 black figures and the 5 black figures, refer to the secret of heaven and earth that Jacinta warned about. Remember that? She said there will be a secret of heaven and a secret of earth, and the latter is terrifying. So the first secret, the first 4 figures represented the secret of earth, that is mankind. And that's what the secret that is terrifying. Probably refers to nuclear war. So that was blocking Snowland's trying to find the entrance to the church. That's one of the things. The 4 black figures were preventing her. The maze was preventing her or hindering her. But now she has escaped the church, which is burned down, and she is also being hindered by 5 black figures. Well, the secret of heaven is God's punishment on earth. And that's what I think the 5 black figures represent. The comet, for example, striking the earth. That would also produce a lot of black figures. And I think that's what it represents. The secret of heaven is the 5 black figures. The secret of earth is the 4 black figures. Let me see now what we want to. So I think it's time for the conclusion. And I would certainly be interested in what you think. Do you think that the food market is blown up? Does that represent the church in the end times? That's what I think it does. Does it represent America? I think you could make a case for that. Does it represent simply the churches, the food markets, the disruption of the food supply? In other words, famine. I think it's very possible it represents all three of those things. A lot of apocalyptic prophecy has more than one meaning. And the conclusion is that we're not going to escape man's judgment or man's punishments or God's wrath without Mary's direction, and which has been really Snowland's meaning of all of her visions, just like all apocalyptic prophecy. That's really the meaning of all of it. And what I'm going to ask is, do you think anybody's going to listen to Snowland's warning? Well, how about my last video about the evil satanic logo coming out of the Vatican, the Jubilee 2025 logo? Did anybody pay any attention to my interpretation of this? Did any of the Catholic sites on YouTube? I mean, like Taylor Marshall or Return to Tradition or Mystic Post TV or Mother Refuge of the End Times. None of them. Not that I know of. Wouldn't you think this would be considered an important exposition? So I'm warning all of you. My interpretations of Snowland's dream, Dana Coverstone's dream, my interpretation of Vatican logos, they get pittance as far as the number of views go. It's going to take the horrible consequences that we see in Snowland's dream to happen, and then that's when a lot of Catholics will wake up eventually. Hi, Snowland.
Hi, William.
Okay, now I wasn't expecting you to call in, but you're more than welcome. What have you got? Any suggestions as far as my interpretation?
Your interpretation was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Did the Holy Spirit guide you?
Oh, I think so. I don't think I prayed this time. I usually do pray to the Holy Spirit. I always pray before my programs, but that's why I wear my crucifix, Snowland. I always wear a crucifix when I do these programs because I want to be protected so that I don't say the wrong thing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So let me see. Maybe somebody.
I think he had this response. Timing is everything. Shadow banning is real. That's another significance, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay, I could do that. You want me to go through the comments here and see what they say? Because that's kind of interesting. Sam says that timing is everything. Shadow banning is real. Okay, so maybe Sam is saying that the shadow figures represent shadow banning. Because that happens to my videos all the time.
That and also demonics.
Yes, the figures could be demonic. Certainly, they represent they blocked your way, and you did not. You weren't afraid. You were sort of you wanted to avoid them. You didn't say you were afraid of them, but when you saw them, you had a bad feeling about them, right?
Yeah, but I did have that feeling. But also, my question is that if I had the Blessed Mother with me, well, when I saw them, the Blessed Mother was a little bit farther from me. She was like a couple inches away from me when I spot them. She would stop and I would continue on, and that's when I saw them. I forgot to add that. I just remembered.
Oh, okay. But now, what made you think that the woman was Mary, who was with you?
I think that the fact that it's supposed to represent my sister, but this time my sister didn't have long hair. My sister doesn't have long hair. If you see her today, she doesn't have long hair, and I knew that she wanted me to think that she's my sister, but I knew my sister doesn't have long hair anymore, and I don't know. She felt so kind.
Mm-hmm. Yes. You mentioned your sister, and I noticed that your sister was not in your dream. Now, very often, Sayako is in your dreams, but I noticed she was not in this dream.
Yeah.
So you had a kind of feeling that the woman who I think was Mary, she kind of was taking your sister's place. Now you're saying this person had a long hair, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
She was very pretty.
Oh, okay. I'm sure that she represents Mary. Let me see. What else have we got here? Carolyn Cow says, "Ask God for a continuation of this dream." Well, I don't think you. I think the dream is complete. I think it. I think we know what we have to do. In other words, we're in the tribulation, and the message is that we have to follow Mary. Don't you think that's the message, Snowland?
Yes. And also, I would like to know what happens in the end. I mean, I was in a cliffhanger. I mean, behind me was a grown-up building, and in front of and other chorus in front of me was the evil shadows. I mean, I don't know what would have happened next. I would have loved to finish it.
Oh, I see. So you think there should be a resolution to it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe Carolyn is right. Maybe you should ask God for a continuation of the dream to find out. Are you going to be? I don't think it's necessary. You're stuck between the rock and a hard place, but I mean that's the way it's going to be in our refuges. It's going to be this way. It's not going to be an easy. The resolution is going to be when is the millennium, and this dream takes you right up to the millennium. In other words, the snow is getting deeper and deeper, and so. I thought the ending was good the way it is, Snowland, myself.
Oh, and what do you, I did not know about the 1870, about the war.
Oh, yeah, that occurred to me after I read over your dream. I said, where do we find that 1870 in prophecy? And then I realized it's in the prophecy of La Salette. And it's where it's the end of the peace. There's 25 years of peace, and she says at the end of the peace is 1870, which is the start of the Franco-Prussian War, very famous war in Europe, and the leader of Germany was Otto von Bismarck, and he was an anti-Catholic, and well, you saw the quote, and I think one of the purposes of 1870 in your dream is to reference Bismarck as a precursor to the Antichrist. So I think that, in other words, the same as this man in your dream. Even though you didn't think he was evil, I began to realize that he does represent evil, and that the fire, that he is the one that causes the explosion of the church. And of course, I interpreted the food market as being the church, but it could be other things. It could represent food markets in the United States. It could represent the United States. So I think there are three possible interpretations.
Yeah, it's a lot going on right now with the food industry.
Yes.
I have people that, that specialize in this stuff. They said it's really bad because if you look, some people should look up shrink inflation. You should look up on that. We get in less every time we buy. We get in less what we pay for.
Oh yes, I know what you mean. Right. For example, for years, mayonnaise jars, and I eat mayonnaise like it's the only way to put condiments on anything. Mayonnaise jars always used to be 32 ounces. In other words, 2 pounds. Well, yeah. They use the same size jar, but now if you see on the package, it's 30 ounces. They don't put as much in. They charge them, of course, that was quite a few years ago. They did that, but that's the same idea. You're right, Snow, and that is they are having shrink inflation. I don't think that's what your dream is about, but it could be. It could be partly that way. I don't know what the people are saying here. Maybe I should go read through these very quickly. So Adam and Nancy are here. Alyssa Moulton, Uncle Jalapeno says, I'm interested in hearing how the 4th of July is linked to end times prophecy. Sam is here. Deborah B., Lena K., Lena Kay says the recent mass shooter had a fascination with the number 47. Well, that's very possible. I think that shooter he was possessed. There's no doubt about it. And as Alex Jones says, those people are all on these psychosomatic drugs or whatever they call them.
Yeah, you can see the evil. He has the crazy eyes. You can see it.
Oh yes, yeah, in their eyes. I think you're right. Okay, Roses for BVM says the big machine brings CERN to mind. Okay, that could be. It also reminds me, that big machine that you saw in your dream, that also reminds me of Dana Coverstone's dream where he had the big machine. Do you remember that dream, Snowland?
Yeah.
Right. It's similar to that, I think. So.
And you think it's that big machine is tied to David Coverstone? The dream?
I should have look into that. I didn't do it before the program. I should have watched that Decode over again. I'm not sure. It sounds very similar, doesn't it?
Yeah, because a couple of days ago, I think July 5th, they just launched the big CERN, the second one. They just turned on the big CERN.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what Roses for BVM says. She says the big machine brings CERN to mind. So maybe that is what you're talking about.
Yeah, and maybe it's gonna blow up.
Well, that's possible. It could blow up. I don't know if they would tell us that it happened, but maybe that's what your dream is prophesying about. Well, as I say, I think there are quite a few interpretations, Snowland. So thank you very much for it.
Thank you. And everybody, just get ready for winter. And if lights goes out, do your very best to keep everybody warm.
Okay, Mom.
Thank you, William. God bless you and good night.
God bless you too. God bless you too, Snowland. Good night.
Good night.
Good night now. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay. Snowland checking in, helping with our interpretation. I always like talking with her. And believe me, it's unusual. And by the way, you people, you have an opportunity to interact with a seer. I mean, that's a real gift that Snowland has. Well, John Leary has the same kind of gift. He gets locutions from the Lord. And he's going to be here August 5th through 7th. So if you want to join our pilgrimage, send an email to wfrnpilgrimage@yahoo.com and you'll get a hold of Sandra. She's in charge of this. Okay. Roar Lion says, hi, Mr. Tapley. Thank you. Roses for BVM says, thank you, Mr. T. And Snowland, well, thank all of you for joining on this program. And I certainly appreciate, especially having Snowland called in. I worked quite hard on this all day, and I think I got it pretty well, although very often afterwards I will look it over again and see that I've missed something. But I don't know if I've missed anything on this time or not, but I wouldn't be surprised. So keep me honest, people. If you see that I have made a mistake, let me know. Now, don't forget, Sam will be back in 1 hour from now. He will be doing a live stream rosary on D-Live. And then I will be back tomorrow morning on this station, same station, a different time, at 10 a.m. Eastern Time for a live stream rosary on this channel until I do see all of you again, either tonight in Sam's program or tomorrow on my own rosary program. Until I see all of you again, may God bless all of you, and may all of you have a very blessed evening.